On October 1st, 2013, federal agents entered a public library in San Francisco. They arrested 29-year-old Ross Ulbricht. Ulbricht ran the largest, most sophisticated online market for illegal drugs in history. He named it Silk Road, a reference to the ancient trade routes that connected China to Europe, beginning in the 2nd century BC. Ulbricht hoped to create his own modern-day marketplace, except his would sell hardcore drugs and other illegal goods. Over the 2 years and 10 months that Silk Road operated, federal prosecutors say it processed nearly $214 million in sales using Bitcoin. The site operated on a hidden part of the internet called the dark web. Prosecutors say a journal the FBI found on Ulbricht's computer stated he wanted to create a website where people could buy anything anonymously, with no trail whatsoever that could lead back to them.
Unfortunately for Ulbricht, he did leave a trail of digital breadcrumbs that ultimately took him down and his empire with it.
Ulbricht was born on March 17, 1984, in Austin, Texas. He was a Boy Scout, attaining the highest rank of Eagle Scout, just like his dad had done. He had a happy childhood, growing up an easygoing hipster but serious student who scored 1,460 on his SATs, within the 96th percentile, and got a full ride to the University of Texas at Austin, where he studied physics. He then won another full scholarship for a master's at Penn State in material science and engineering. It was at Penn that he evolved into a hardcore libertarian, a political philosophy that advocates individualism and minimal state involvement in people's lives. He was a fan and follower of libertarian economist Ludwig von Mises, who opposed government interference in the economy. When then presidential candidate Mitt Romney asked, "What is America's greatest challenge?" Ulbricht responded like this on his YouTube channel.
But I think the most important thing is getting us out of the United Nations.
Ulbricht wanted to create a world free from institutional or government control. That mindset led him to create Silk Road in January 2011. You couldn't type in a normal web address to get to Silk Road or use a normal web browser. You needed software called Tor that works as a web browser. Tor was developed by the US Navy as a way of communicating privately over the internet. It conceals the real IP address of computers on the network to hide the identity of the user, and it can't be traced by the government. Silk Road's address used a bunch of random numbers and letters that ended with .onion. Ulbricht made the site by teaching himself how to code. When he needed more help, he reached out on a Bitcoin community forum, writing, "I'm looking for the best and brightest IT pro in the Bitcoin community to be the lead developer in a venture-backed Bitcoin startup company." Anyone interested was to contact him via his email, rossulbricht@gmail.com. Making his email public would later come back to haunt him. He also got coding help from a buddy of his from undergrad, Richard Bates. Ulbricht had no choice but to eventually tell his friend what he was up to. He also told his girlfriend, Julia V. One day, he showed her the psychedelic mushrooms he was growing and selling as a starter product on his new website. Silk Road would eventually be a marketplace for all kinds of drugs: weed, cocaine, LSD, ecstasy, heroin. This fit Ulbricht's libertarian mindset. He believed that whatever someone decided to put in their body was their choice and no one else's, least of all the government's. Ulbricht also believed everyone had the right to self-defense when guns started appearing on Silk Road. However, he realized he didn't need the controversy and soon took weapons off the site. After getting his business up and running, he turned his attention to attracting customers. He decided to write a post on a magic mushrooms forum called the Shroomery, pretending to be someone who happened to come across Silk Road. He used the username Altoid, posting, "I'm thinking of buying off it, but wanted to see if anyone here had heard of it and could recommend it." He included a link with instructions on how to access Silk Road. He did the same on a Bitcoin community forum about buying and selling heroin, describing Silk Road as an anonymous Amazon.com. It wasn't long before buyers showed up. To limit scams, there was a rating system for sellers similar to Amazon reviews. If a seller sold bad drugs and got a poor rating, it would hurt their sales. The drugs arrived by mail with fake return addresses. They'd be slipped inside CD and DVD cases. Some sellers got even more creative and put them in little ripples of cardboard. The packages had printed mailing labels rather than handwritten ones to look like they came from a legitimate business. Ironically, that backfired. The printed labels actually attracted the suspicion of authorities. In the summer of 2011, Department of Homeland Security agent Jared Duryagian learned of a small, neat package with a printed address going through Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. It contained a single pink pill of ecstasy, which was also suspicious because usually they shipped in bulk. Soon, 2 or 3 packages began arriving. then 50, then up to 1,000 a day. Many came from the Netherlands, which is a notorious source of drugs. Agent Duryagian visited an address where one of the packages was to be delivered, chatted with the roommate of the buyer, who said the drugs came from a site called Silk Road. Duryagian had never heard of Silk Road before. He did some digging online and came across an article written by Gawker journalist Adrian Chen in June 2011. Chen wrote, "Making small talk with your pot dealer sucks. Buying cocaine can get you shot. What if you could buy and sell drugs online, like books or light bulbs? Now you can. Welcome to Silk Road." The article attracted 3 million views and put Silk Road on the map. Not only did Silk Road soon attract the attention of thousands of drug dealers and buyers, but also politicians like Senator Chuck Schumer, who called for the site to be shut down. The US government was concerned, but not only about drug sales. As Nick Bilton detailed in his book, American Kingpin, Homeland Security agent Duryagian feared that a terrorist organization could enter the country and then buy something from Silk Road to harm Americans. He convinced the US Attorney's Office in Chicago to take on the case. As Silk Road came into the spotlight, Ulbricht's college friend Richard, who helped him with programming, said he urged him to shut it down. Ulbricht and his girlfriend Julia broke up soon after the launch of Silk Road. She said one of the reasons was because of the insane pressure she felt to keep his secret. Ulbricht lied to her and Richard, telling them he had sold the business to someone else and no longer had anything to do with it. He moved to Australia for a while and lived with his sister in Sydney. Around this time, he was contacted through the site by a person going by the name Variety Jones. Variety Jones became his right-hand man and someone Ulbricht described as a real mentor. Neither knew the other's true identity. Variety Jones pointed out the gaping holes in security on Silk Road. Ulbricht decided to encrypt all the files on his computer. This is the actual laptop he used to run Silk Road. He put in a kill switch that would automatically shut down his device by pressing a predetermined key in case authorities rushed in at the last minute. He also prepared an escape plan if needed, including destroy laptop, hard drive, find a place to live on Craigslist for cash with a new identity. Variety Jones came up with Ulbricht's infamous pseudonym on Silk Road, Dread Pirate Roberts, a reference to the fearsome captains from the film The Princess Bride who passed the name on to a chosen successor. In the same way, Ulbricht hoped to one day pass on the name Dread Pirate Roberts to someone who might succeed him. Variety Jones got him to see how big Silk Road could grow to be. Ulbricht wrote in a personal journal disclosed by prosecutors, "Silk Road is going to become a phenomenon, and at least one person will tell me about it, unknowing that I was its creator." In 2 short years, Silk Road grew to more than 100,000 users with sales of nearly 214 million, including 13.2 million in commissions for Silk Road, according to prosecutors. The feds were left scratching their heads as they still had no clue who was the mastermind behind Silk Road. Who was this Dread Pirate Roberts? Who was the captain of the ship? It became somewhat of a competition amongst the various government agencies to be the one to identify Dread Pirate Roberts. To better understand how Silk Road operated, Department of Homeland Security agent Duryagian posed as a buyer and made 52 undercover purchases. He also seized thousands of packages, linked certain sales back to their source, and arrested several people. His biggest get came when he tracked down a Dread Pirate Roberts employee, a moderator on Silk Road's user forums going by the name Cirrus. He forced her to hand over her account, and then he pretended to be her. Duryagian, posing as Cirrus, got assignments directly from Dread Pirate Roberts. He wasn't the only federal agent chatting with the Silk Road boss. DEA agent Carl Force was part of a task force in Baltimore that was also investigating. Force used the username Knob and posed as a drug dealer originally from the Dominican Republic who smuggled millions of dollars worth of cocaine and heroin into the US every year. He was on friendly terms with Dread Pirate Roberts, who had no idea he was speaking with a DEA agent, an agent who, in a twist in the tale, turned out to be corrupt. Force convinced Dread Pirate Roberts to pay him $50,000 in Bitcoin by claiming he had insider information from a government employee. When Force reported the conversation to the DEA, he claimed he never received any payment, when in fact, he funneled the Bitcoin into a personal account. And believe it or not, a second agent who worked on the same Baltimore task force was also stealing, Secret Service agent Sean Bridges. When Silk Road customer support rep Curtis Clark Green was arrested at his home with a kilo of coke, Bridges used Green's admin access to steal 20,000 Bitcoin from other user accounts. Dread Pirate Roberts thought Green to be responsible for the theft. He wanted to rough him up and got egged on by his mentor, Variety Jones. Dread Pirate Roberts knew Green's real identity because, as a condition for being on Silk Road's payroll, staff had to hand over their government ID. Dread Pirate Roberts turned to Knob, aka DEA agent Carl Force, to beat up Green. Knob agreed. However, Dread Pirate Roberts then changed his mind and messaged, "Can you change the order to execute rather than torture?" Dread Pirate Roberts said he had, quote, "never killed a man or had one killed before, but it is the right move in this case." He didn't want to risk Green giving up information to the authorities, as he knew he had been arrested when he searched him up online. Knob agreed to do the job for $80,000 in Bitcoin. Ulbricht later received photos of a dead Green, except he wasn't really dead. Agent Force staged Green's death, complete with photos of him on the floor, covered in Campbell's Chicken and Stars soup. The Dread Pirate Roberts is said to have ordered hits on 5 others whom he felt threatened by. Silk Road had been prey for blackmailers and extortionists. However, there was no proof that anyone was ever killed. Ulbricht was never charged with murder for hire. The government agencies were still nowhere closer to figuring out who was Dread Pirate Roberts. The DEA enlisted the help of the FBI cybercrime team in New York, as it had more technological know-how, including experience with the dark web. FBI agent Chris Tarbell knew that in order to catch Dread Pirate Roberts, they had to wait for them to make a mistake. And according to the FBI, the Dread Pirate Roberts did finally slip up about a year after the agency started investigating. In May 2013, investigators noticed coding errors, vulnerabilities on the Silk Road website that leaked IP addresses. As a result, they discovered the Silk Road servers were housed in a data center in Iceland. By the way, Ulbricht's defense team doesn't buy this explanation. They believe the NSA spied illegally and tipped off the FBI to the server's location. Agent Tarbell flew to Reykjavik, where Icelandic authorities gave him a drive with information from the servers. The FBI accessed a treasure trove of data. They could see the number of transactions processed, who logged in and out, and crucially, Tarbell and his team had identified that the master computer Silk Road servers talked to, the one Dread Pirate Roberts used to log into Silk Road, was named Frosty. And Dread Pirate Roberts was logging in with an encryption key that ended with Frosty@Frosty. They could also tell Dread Pirate Roberts recently used internet from a San Francisco cafe to log into a Silk Road server via a VPN. By the spring of 2012, Ulbricht had returned home from Australia and eventually moved to San Francisco to live with a childhood friend. So now, the FBI had the name of the computer and could focus their search on San Francisco. But still, no idea of Dread Pirate Roberts' real identity. That piece of the puzzle would be filled in by Gary Alford, who worked for the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. As a tax investigator, he was assigned to follow the money, but instead discovered the identity of Dread Pirate Roberts. Alford figured that whoever started Silk Road would have had to drum up interest in it long before that Gawker article came out. So he decided to do Google searches for Silk Road prior to June 2011. That's when he stumbled on Ulbricht's online posts, where he pretended to be someone who happened to come across Silk Road. Alford noted the username for the posts, Altoid. He also noticed another post where Altoid asked for IT help on the Bitcoin forum that also included his personal email, rossulbricht@gmail.com. Someone with the username Altoid also posted on Stack Overflow with a question related to Tor. Soon after, that user changed the alias from Altoid to Frosty. Alford didn't know the significance of the name Frosty at the time, but what he did have was a real name to track down. He Googled Ross Ulbricht and came across the LinkedIn profile of a young man with rather cryptic life goals. Quote, "The most widespread and systemic use of force is amongst institutions and governments, so this is my current point of effort." Alford asked himself, could Ross Ulbricht be the brains behind Silk Road? Then came another piece of the puzzle. In July 2013, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers intercepted 9 fake IDs coming into the U.S. from Canada. Homeland Security agents decided to pay a visit to the intended recipient. They showed up at 2260 15th Avenue in San Francisco, the address where Ulbricht had been staying. He had moved out of the place he shared with his friend and into a sublet he found on Craigslist, where he paid his rent in cash. He took every precaution, including adopting a fake identity. His roommates knew him as Joshua Terry, though he kept much of his backstory the same. He said he was from Texas, worked in IT, which is why he was always on his computer, and had recently returned home from Australia, which made not having a cell phone less suspicious. Joshua kept to himself and ate steak dinners for one. When the agents questioned Ulbricht, they observed that he became visibly nervous. He didn't admit to purchasing the fake IDs, let alone that he bought them so he could rent additional servers to deal with Silk Road's growth, as well as security issues. Prosecutors later claimed he prepared for a life on the run,